Tell me, what do you do?
Gospel singer Donnie McClurkin was banned from performing at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial because of his stance on homosexuality. McClurkin has testified God delivered him from being gay.
Happiness is something that's relative. I've got joy. Joy is consistent. Happiness is based on what happens. But joy is a constant type of assurance that everything's going to be okay.
At 65, Donnie McClurkin's tragedy is beyond heartbreaking. The gospel superstar who preached deliverance from homosexuality just admitted he still craves men.
My past relationships were a sprinkling of everything, men and women.
But this shocking confession began with his mother blaming him for his baby brother's death.
And my mother telling me that I killed her son. My mother's a woman, and I go near her down the street. Get him away from me! Get him away from me! You killed my son!
Then came the that would define his entire existence.
Other men in the church, in the grand old church. What am I doing? I'm taking the mask off. I'm taking the mask off. I'm taking the mask off. I'm telling the young people I'm coming clean. You want real? I'm real right now. You want real? I'm clear. I'm real. I'm transparent right now. You have no idea how many times I gave myself away trying to find myself. Just trying to feel loved because my daddy didn't cover me. Just trying to feel loved because I didn't have a man to show me what love was. And the only man that loved me lusted me when I was 8.
The man who built a career on overcoming his past was about to reveal that his past never let him go. So let's get into it.
And he was like, well, you know, McClurkin is kind of hard to pronounce. Maybe you need to think about changing your name to Donnie McClure. And McClure is easy, and people remember it.
To truly understand Donnie McClurkin's story, we have to go back to May 29th, 1933. That's when Olivia Jenkins, just 13 years old, gave birth to her daughter, Frances. Frances's father was Olivia's stepfather.
Is Pastor Donnie McClurkin, born in South Carolina, and he grew up as a child, went through so many things.
Growing up, Frances didn't know the truth. She thought her grandmother was her mother, and her mom, Olivia, was her sister. It wasn't until Frances turned 16 that she learned the devastating reality. This revelation broke something inside her that would never fully heal. Later, she married Donald McClurkin, and on November 9th, 1959, they welcomed a son, Donnie McClurkin. Frances poured all her pain and hope into her children, teaching them how to sing. Donnie's voice stood out among his siblings, clear and powerful even as a child. But despite having his father at home, Donald was emotionally absent. He never praised Donnie or showed him love, creating a void that the boy desperately tried to fill.
Daddy was born in South Carolina.
Oh, it's your dad.
I was born in New York. But same thing.
Okay.
You can't be born to a father from South Carolina
Right.
and not be from South Carolina.
Yeah.
When Donnie was just 8 years old, tragedy struck without warning. His 2-year-old brother followed him across the street and was hit by a speeding car. The little boy died instantly. This loss shattered their family completely. Donnie's mother, overwhelmed with grief and rage, blamed him for the accident. She screamed at him, accusing him of killing her son and demanding he be taken away from her. Those words burned into Donnie's soul, joining the pain he already carried from his father's coldness. The family began falling apart. His father started drinking heavily, and his mother turned to numb her pain. 8-year-old Donnie was drowning in guilt and confusion, carrying the weight of his brother's death and his mother's hatred.
My mother's a woman, and I go near her down the street. Get him away from me! Get him away from me! You killed my son!
In 1969, Donnie wandered into a church service. The minister spoke about Christ's love and sacrifice. For the first time, Donnie felt something other than pain and guilt. He wondered if this Jesus could help him carry everything he was going through. That day, Donnie gave his life to Christ. The church became his sanctuary, the only place where he felt he truly belonged, rather than being blamed and rejected. On the day of his brother's funeral, 8-year-old Donnie faced another horror. His great-uncle violated him while the family grieved. The timing was deliberate and cruel, taking advantage of a child already shattered by loss and guilt. Donnie's young mind couldn't process this on top of everything else he was carrying. The trauma layered upon trauma, creating wounds that would never fully heal. The didn't end there. When Donnie was 13, his great-uncle's son continued the cycle of violation. This second confused Donnie even more deeply. He began questioning his own identity, wondering if what happened to him meant something about who he was supposed to be. The shame and confusion ate at him from the inside. Donnie turned to prayer, desperately trying to make sense of what had been done to him. He begged God to help him understand, to take away the confusion and pain. He decided he wouldn't let these experiences define him, but the damage was already done. The questions about his would follow him for decades. To survive, Donnie withdrew from his family's chaos. His parents' marriage was crumbling under the weight of their son's death and their own addictions. The divorce came as no surprise, just another piece of his world falling apart. Donnie found refuge in the only places that felt safe: the church and music. He threw himself into learning piano, his fingers finding comfort on the keys when words failed him. Music became his language for pain he couldn't express any other way. By his teens, he was forming groups like the McClurkin Singers and the New York Restoration Choir. In 1975, they released an album called I See a World, perhaps Donnie's way of imagining a reality different from the one that had broken him so young. The church and music weren't just hobbies for Donnie. They were lifelines, the only things standing between him and the darkness that threatened to consume him completely.
My faith tells me that I'm supposed to be responsible for this temple.
Right.
This is the temple of the Lord. I've got to maintain this thing because in me dwells God.
In 1983, while working with a church choir, Donnie met Pastor Marvin Winans. Pastor Winans saw something special in the young man and invited him to Detroit to help start a ministry. 6 years later, in 1989, Donnie made the life-changing move to Detroit. There, he became an associate minister at Perfecting Church and started touring churches across the country, his powerful voice drawing crowds wherever he went. Donnie's music career exploded in 1996 when he released his first studio album, Donnie McClurkin. The album went gold, launching him into gospel stardom. Then, in 2000, his song We Fall Down became a massive hit, playing constantly on gospel radio stations. The success brought him recognition not just as a singer, but as a powerful preacher whose sermons moved audiences to tears.
We fall down sometimes, but we get back up again.
But behind the applause and accolades, Donnie was fighting a private war. The childhood left him confused about his and he struggled to understand what those experiences meant for his identity. He wrestled with attractions he didn't want to have, praying desperately for God to take away feelings that seemed to contradict everything he preached. In public speeches and his book, he would later describe feeling broken, believing that homosexuality wasn't part of God's plan for him. In 2000, Donnie had a son, Matthew, with a woman named Kim. They never married, but the birth of his son felt like a victory to Donnie. He believed that becoming a father would help him find the sense of manhood he had been searching for his entire life. He also adopted a 9-year-old girl named Michelle, expanding his family while still battling his inner demons. But fatherhood didn't heal Donnie's wounds the way he had hoped. His own traumatic childhood haunted his parenting. He admitted that his relationship with Matthew was broken for several years. While he provided financially for his son, he struggled to give the emotional support the boy desperately needed. Every morning, Donnie would pray for help, begging God to make him a good father despite his fears and confusion. His own father had been emotionally absent, and now Donnie found himself repeating patterns he had sworn to break. The man who preached healing to thousands was discovering that some wounds run too deep for even faith to easily mend.
When you've done all you can.
Despite his personal struggles, Donnie became a pastor. In 2001, his mentor Marvin sent him to Freeport, New York, to help establish Perfecting Faith Church. Donnie took on the role of senior pastor, a position he holds to this day. But even with this new authority, Donnie hadn't found peace with his inner battles. He was still fighting a war between his public persona and his private struggles. Donnie began speaking openly about his 20-year battle with homosexuality. He claimed he had overcome it through faith, but admitted the temptations never fully disappeared. He described it as an ongoing struggle where past desires could resurface without warning. The more he preached about overcoming these feelings, the more some people seemed determined to test his resolve. Donnie found strength in accountability, surrounding himself with people who would help keep him on track. He developed a philosophy of mutual support, believing that everyone needed others to lean on during moments of weakness. His approach was built on the idea that no one could fight these battles alone.
People told me what I could not do. They didn't tell me who I was. They never told me what I could accomplish, who I could be. They put the shackles on and the limits on.
In 2001, Donnie wrote a memoir and released a documentary about his childhood trauma and struggles. The project forced him to revisit painful memories, but he believed sharing his story would help others facing similar battles. Surprisingly, he also criticized church leaders who spoke harshly about LGBTQ people, saying they failed to show Christ's love. But Donnie's compassionate tone didn't last long. He soon became a prominent figure in the ex-gay movement, promoting the controversial belief that homosexuality was something people could and should change through faith and therapy. He compared same-sex attraction to drug addiction, arguing that God intended for gay people to transform their orientation. This shift from understanding to condemnation created enemies. Former lovers began speaking out against him, challenging his claims about being delivered from homosexuality. They painted a picture of a man who was living a double life, preaching one thing while privately struggling with the very desires he publicly condemned.
I've messed up more than I've had good. My past relationships were a sprinkling of everything, men and women.
In early 2001, a man contacted blogger Clay Kane with explosive allegations about Donnie McClurkin. The man claimed he had met Donnie backstage at a gospel event, where they exchanged contact information and began communicating regularly through phone calls and emails. According to his account, Donnie confided in him about the crushing loneliness he felt while traveling for his music career. During their conversations, Donnie allegedly revealed that he would sometimes cry alone in hotel rooms, overwhelmed by isolation despite being surrounded by crowds who adored him. The man claimed their relationship gradually became intimate over the following months. He described uncomfortable encounters where Donnie allegedly preferred being submissive and wanted to act out specific scenarios. Despite the awkwardness he described, the man said they maintained an on-and-off relationship from 2001 to 2004 before eventually losing contact. These allegations emerged just as Donnie was becoming more vocal about his transformation. In November 2009, at a church convention, he declared that without Jesus, he would still be homosexual. The timing of his increasingly aggressive stance seemed to contradict the private behavior his accuser described. The controversy exploded in 2009 when gospel singer Tonex came out as openly gay. Donnie publicly attacked Tonex, calling homosexuality a perversion and claiming that society and the church had failed him. His rhetoric became increasingly harsh. During a sermon at the annual Holy Convocation Convention, he called homosexuality vampires. In 2011, at the Church of God in Christ convention, he labeled homosexuality a perversion corrupting youth and blamed absent fathers for young people's confusion. The audience's enthusiastic response revealed how deeply these beliefs ran in black churches. But for those who knew about the allegations against Donnie, his fiery condemnation seemed like the desperate performance of a man trying to convince himself as much as his congregation. 2013 brought devastating personal loss when Donnie's parents both died within the same year. The man who had blamed his mother for decades and struggled with his father's emotional distance was now completely orphaned. The grief hit him harder than he expected, leaving him more isolated than ever.
I missed the fact that I did not have the family unit that I could lay next to my spouse with my baby on my chest and be the quintessential dad.
But his personal pain was compounded by professional rejection. That same year, organizers uninvited him from performing at the March on Washington Memorial concert because of his harsh anti-gay statements. His reputation as a gospel star was being overshadowed by his reputation as an anti-LGBTQ crusader. When the Supreme Court legalized marriage equality in 2015, Donnie's response was swift and furious. He expressed disgust with the decision and urged his congregation to stand firm against what he called sin. He became one of the most vocal critics of the ruling, rallying his followers to reject what he saw as society's moral collapse. Donnie defended his stance by saying he was simply speaking biblical truth, regardless of his own imperfections. He claimed he didn't need to be perfect to preach what he believed the Bible taught about homosexuality. The pattern of rejection had actually started years earlier. Back in 2007, Barack Obama's presidential campaign had invited Donnie to perform at an event in Charleston, South Carolina, hoping to appeal to religious Southern voters. But Donnie used the platform to declare that God had delivered him from homosexuality, making it clear he believed same-sex attraction was a choice people could change. The backlash was immediate and severe. LGBT groups and supporters erupted in anger. Obama's team quickly distanced themselves from Donnie's comments, emphasizing that the candidate believed in equality regardless of orientation. Obama canceled Donnie's appearances at future campaign events, choosing political inclusion over religious endorsement.
Gospel singer Donnie McClurkin was banned from performing at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial because of his stance on homosexuality. McClurkin has testified God delivered him from being gay.
The Obama incident revealed a troubling contradiction in Donnie's journey. He had once criticized church leaders for their harsh treatment of LGBTQ people, calling for more love and compassion. But now he had become exactly what he had once condemned, one of the most aggressive voices against homosexuality in the black church.
He was set to perform Saturday for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, but a handful of gay rights activists objected.
The transformation from compassionate critic to fierce opponent left many people confused about who Donnie McClurkin really was. The man who had once called for love was now preaching condemnation, seemingly forgetting his own earlier wisdom about showing Christ's love to everyone.
I want to lay down next to somebody that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. I really do.
In August 2016, on the Praise the Lord talk show, host Matt Crouch made a stunning announcement. He declared that Donnie was engaged to Nicole C. Mullen, a fellow gospel singer. The moment caught everyone off guard, including Donnie himself, who was sitting right there as a guest. Instead of denying it outright, Donnie went along with the narrative, saying that marriage was the only missing piece in his life. He claimed he was doing well financially and spiritually, and was working on his emotional health. But he spoke about building a family as if his existing children didn't count.
Never having a long-term relationship in my life and never being married.
Nicole wasn't having it. She quickly took to social media to set the record straight. They were dating, she explained, but definitely not engaged. She pointed out that Donnie hadn't even met her father yet, and they still had issues to work through before any wedding could happen. She left the door open, saying there was a good chance they'd marry, but they were taking things slow.
I didn't know how to have the relationship. I didn't know really what a woman wanted.
Donnie later posted a video claiming he and Nicole needed more counseling before taking the next step. Whether this was damage control or genuine caution, it didn't matter. The relationship was already falling apart. In December 2020, Nicole married someone else entirely. She found her happiness with a different man, leaving Donnie alone once again.
I'm gonna probably be alone for the rest of my life as far as a mate is concerned.
Donnie's involvement with Exodus International revealed another troubling chapter in his story. This organization promoted conversion therapy, claiming they could change people's sexual orientation through prayer and counseling. Donnie became one of their poster children, writing for their website about how he had been saved and transformed into the man he was meant to be. But in 2018, someone on Twitter made a disturbing claim. They alleged that Donnie's mother had sent them to Exodus in the 1990s for therapy, where the leaders used them. When they told their parents what was happening, Exodus kicked them out rather than addressing the accusation added a dark layer to Donnie's association with the organization. The irony was devastating. In 2013, Exodus International shut down after 37 years of operation. The organization that Donnie had championed issued a public apology to the gay community, admitting they had caused harm and acknowledging their methods were wrong. They apologized for the judgment that came from Christian churches, essentially admitting that everything Donnie had supported was built on a lie. In December 2018, Donnie's world literally crashed around him. He lost consciousness while driving on the highway and crashed his car. He ended up in the hospital with a sprained wrist, damaged knee, and stitches on his thumb. The injuries were relatively minor, but the symbolism was hard to ignore. A man who had spent years trying to control his destiny had completely lost control. After the car crash, Donnie retreated from the public eye, focusing on his music and processing everything that had happened. Then, in 2021, he made a shocking appearance on the TV show Uncensored. During the interview, Donnie made revelations that stunned his audience. He admitted he had never maintained a long-term relationship with anyone, only brief encounters with both men and women throughout his life. Most devastatingly, he confessed that he still felt romantic attraction to men, but was actively choosing not to pursue those feelings.
My past relationships were a sprinkling of everything, men and women.
Donnie tried to explain his ongoing struggle by comparing his attraction to men to craving sugar. He said he didn't eat sugar anymore, but that didn't mean he stopped wanting it. The analogy felt forced and uncomfortable, as if he was trying to convince himself as much as his audience that his desires could be managed through willpower alone. The admission painted a heartbreaking picture of a 62-year-old man who had never experienced lasting love with anyone. Donnie acknowledged he might spend the rest of his life alone, a possibility that seemed to weigh heavily on him. His fans responded with an outpouring of sympathy, many expressing that his self-imposed isolation was tragic and unnecessary. The man who had spent decades preaching that homosexuality could be overcome was now admitting that his own attractions had never truly changed. He was simply choosing a life of loneliness over authenticity, believing this sacrifice was what his faith demanded. At 65, Donnie McClurkin remains one of gospel music's most successful artists. His songs, like Stand and We Fall Down, continue playing on radio stations worldwide. His albums have topped Billboard charts, from his Grammy-winning Psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs in 2005 to his most recent album, A Different Song, which hit number 2 on gospel charts in 2019. But behind the musical success lies a man who has spent his entire adult life fighting a war against himself. The little boy who was blamed for his brother's death, violated by family members, and rejected by his mother, grew into a man who learned to reject himself. His tragedy isn't just what was done to him as a child. It's what he chose to do to himself as an adult, believing that denying his authentic self was the only path to salvation. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye!